Gender, culture, and nature. These are three topics that are individually very broad and have many different meanings, yet when examined collectively, raise many questions as to how and why they so closely intertwine. Gender, as defined by the American Psychological Association, is the psychological, behavioral, social, and cultural aspects of being male or female. Since gender is a socially constructed concept, views of masculinity and femininity differ between cultures. Joshua Rothman, a writer for the New York Times, acknowledges that there is no singular definition of culture, but attempts to define it as the combination of a particular way of life, the process of individual enrichment, and an activity. The Oxford Dictionary defines nature as the phenomena of the physical world collectively, including plants, animals, the landscape, and other features and products of the earth, as opposed to humans or human creations. Throughout this video, we will examine the specific ways in which gender, culture, and nature affect each other, discuss the environmental issues formed through aspects of gender and culture alike, and review the relevance and importance of these issues in today's society. In an attempt to answer the question, why is nature important, the Australian Department of Environment and Energy, in its report Australia's Strategy for Nature 2018 to 2030, states that there are many and diverse reasons why Australians care for nature, from the intrinsic belief that nature is beautiful and has a right to exist, through to a recognition of the services nature provides. This not only acknowledges the fundamental role of the environment when it comes to the provision of primary resources such as food, water, and manufacturing materials, but also highlights the essential function nature plays for human health and recreation. We conducted an interview with a student who is currently on exchange at the University of Sydney, who shared how she has engaged with the environment during her time here thus far.
Since I've been here in Australia, I've tried to engage with the environment loads. I've taken part in extreme sport activities, things like skydiving and zip lining over canyons, which was stunning. I've also gone on a lot of hikes and walks as ways of trying to see the scenery and what Australia has to offer.
The report also illuminates the intrinsic significance environmental aspects play in the formation and characterization of cultures, and thus in the process of identity formation for individuals and societal collectives. The government strategy plan explicitly links the environment to people's conception of home, pointing out that many Australians identify the smell of eucalyptus, the laugh of a kookaburra, picnics in the park, glorious white beaches and blue oceans, or expansive outback landscapes as uniquely Australian and as a symbol of home. Regarding culture, the report also elaborates on the ways in which the environment is the focal point of numerous Australian pictures, movies, and artwork, thus constituting an essential part of Australian cultural heritage. Similarly, the government reminds us that connection to and caring for nature and country are fundamental to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and existence. Thus, it becomes apparent that the environment does not only present a large factor in attraction for visitors, playing a major part for Australian tourism, but similarly presents a fundamental part of local people's conception of the country's identity, something that should be of interest to local people and visitors alike. Yet, although there exists much literature on the relationship between culture and the environment, most articles fail to consider gender implications and interconnectedness. When reading the aforementioned government report in conjunction with scholarly works on the connection between humans and nature, it becomes apparent that one aspect heavily stressed by educational articles and scholars on the relation is lacking: gender. For instance, Nicole Detraz, a professor for international security and gender, points out that the health consequences of lack of access to water and of transporting water on a daily basis are of particular relevance to women. Similarly, scholars Ewert, Mitten, and Overholt point out that the burden of environmental issues is unevenly spread across the social categories, especially on those who are marginalized or poor. Thereby, the interconnectedness between the three issues at hand, gender, nature, and culture, becomes apparent. Environment and gender equality, as defined by the World Bank, is the equality of access to and control over natural resources and development benefits, as well as the equality of access to decision-making and representation for environmental and natural resource management. Likewise, Détraz reminds us that the seemingly natural assumption that women take care of the family inevitably allocates women to the role of the caretaker, a task which in the 21st century, especially with worsening environmental degradation and increasingly visible consequences of climate change, becomes more and more important.
Is it about a certain kind of knowledge that they have access to, again, perhaps because of their social roles? Perhaps as mothers and caregivers in most contexts with a greater responsibility for caregiving than men do sometimes. Does that give them access to certain kinds of knowledges? I don't think there's a definitive, reason. There have been all sorts of theories offered. But I just invite you to keep thinking about that question as an active one.
The World Bank states that there are currently 3 sets of gender and environment issues that the world faces today, including gender equitable access to resources, inclusive environmental governance, and resilient strategies that lead to more sustainable future growth. In addition, the institution points out that natural resources form a safety net for women with fewer employment and migration options. Finally, it highlights that, as a result, women are likely to have less and less free time to pursue greater education or venture into enterprise services, as they are forced to spend more time on collection tasks in face of escalating environmental degradation. In addition to gender inequalities with access to resources, there exist gender inequalities in access to governance. As the World Bank informs us, this in turn further catalyzes environmental degradation. They emphasize that the failure to analyze gender issues in environmental decision-making policies is likely to lower the chance of successful environmental policy implementation, as women are unlikely to feel policy ownership and therefore be incentivized to change their behavior.
We find with questions of the environment, there are many ways in which it relates, but I think the most important one is that the same structures of power that work to ensure that some genders are marginalized or privileged over others are the very similar structures of power that lead to degradation of environment. So they're both questions of power and who has it and how it's used.
The link between human and environmental security and the role that nature plays for cultures and human identity are not the only reasons for why we should care about the gender-nature-culture nexus. Rather, and on a positive note, it is also the malleability of these gendered assumptions and inequalities which provide us, the future generation, with leverage regarding positive change.
It's most important, of course, because the environment is us. We are the environment. It's not something separate from us. So for our own very own health, well-being, and survival, we do need to think about environment. And in terms of gender, as increasing research is showing, if we pay attention to how environmental issues have gendered dimensions, then we can address them better, right? If we don't want to fix the environment or save the environment if it means just upholding the same old patriarchal system that's always been in place. We want to change everything.
Consequently, it is up to us to change discourses, and through that, also shift norms and hopefully change laws. By linking the visible and taken-for-granted gendered assumptions to environmentally responsible behavior, we can and should raise awareness of this crucial nexus between gender, culture, and nature. Dr. Neimanis further discussed what we can do to be the change we wish to see.
Educate ourselves about it and stop looking at the environment as something that's happening out there, but something that we do in terms of what we buy, how we make relationships with other people, who we vote for, but also very simple things like how we understand the environment. Is it a sink and a dump that we can throw our trash in, or is it something that is more like kin to us that we have to protect and be responsible for?
It is not only our responsibility, but also our opportunity to really engage with human and natural environments in a sustainable way, a way rendering the present and future more livable for us and the generations to come. With this, we have the chance to not only better understand these concepts and their interrelatedness, but also improve the everyday lives for the people being affected by the pressing issues of the environment and society, which, in an era of globalization and worldwide interconnectedness, means all of us.